Half of young Canadian women say they're putting off kids because they can't afford them. But Mark Carney wants 100 million people, not for families, for the machine. No homes, no hope, and no future. Just growth at any cost. Not to build Canada, but to change it.
I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. We have a great episode for you today. We're going to get to the French language debates a little later in the show. The debate was really interesting. I think Pierre Poilievre won the debate. I think Yves-Francois Blanchet also won the debate. We're going to talk about that later. First, I want to talk about the post-debate scrum, because for independent media, this is our time to shine. And so to talk about that with me today, I have Keean Bexte, my co-founder at Juno News, and the man that was first in line to ask Mark Carney a question last night. Keean, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so walk us through it. First of all, how did you get to the front of the line? And tell us any interesting tidbits about what it was like behind the scenes of the debate.
Yeah, so it was not my first rodeo. This is the third leaders debate that we attended. Obviously, we sued the commission three election cycles ago so that we could get access, because this is kind of the one chance every 4 years we have to speak to the leaders of our country. Pierre's been a little bit more open with us, but Aaron O'Toole was not, Andrew Scheer was not, and Justin Trudeau certainly was not. Mark Carney is showing up to be more of the same, where they use the tools of the state, the RCMP, buildings, access, and other limitations, so that only people like Rosemary Barton and David Cochrane get to ask them questions. Now, I thought my question was pretty reasonable. I had a long list of questions I wanted to ask Mark Carney, all the way from Ghislaine Maxwell and his relationship with her to his tax documents that nobody can seem to find in 2022, to maybe what he spoke about with Xi Jinping in 2024 when he was advising Trudeau and had some weird secret meeting with the president of the Communist Party of China. But I landed on a pretty fair question that I actually thought of it right before I came up to the microphone. And I asked, I guess we can play it, but I asked, do you think Justin Trudeau is a good prime minister? Because he's really been trying to distance himself from Justin Trudeau. He's this new guy, but Justin Trudeau is still great. So he's still trying to maintain the support that Justin Trudeau had. And you can't really outright say, no, Justin Trudeau was a disaster, which 70% of Canadians, more than 70% of Canadians agree. Justin Trudeau was an absolute disaster. By the end of his term, they thought he was a disgrace. He should resign, and he would have lost this election resoundingly if he was the one running. So what Mark Carney's thoughts on him is extremely material to this election. And when the CBC and all of these pundits and losers who are paid way too much to spew their garbage say that our question was unreasonable. I mean, Alex Zoltan of True North came after me.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But let's stick to your question, Keean, because You're right. Let's play the clip, because I want to show, first of all, I was a little surprised. I thought you were going to ask a spicier question, but the question you asked was completely professional, completely reasonable. I was actually surprised that no one had ever asked that to Mark Carney, and you could tell by his response, he didn't have a canned answer, right? Like no one had ever asked him that question. And that in and of itself is valuable journalism, right? The fact that you thought of a question that no one else thought just shows why it's important to have freedom of the press, so that you have different kinds of journalists that think differently from different parts of the country with different backgrounds, and to try to get the leader to answer honestly, right? When they're just asked the same questions that they're asked from the CBC day in and day out, he develops talking points and canned answers. And so you're not getting a real authentic reaction. You're just getting the sort of PR version of the campaign. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So let's play this clip. This is Keean Bexte. You were the first one. Well, technically you were the second questioner. There's two microphone lineups. And so the first question went to the other side, and then this is Keean last night asking the question.
Hi, Mr. Carney, Keean Bexte, Juno News. In your estimation, was Justin Trudeau a good prime minister?
Justin Trudeau and the previous administration made a number of contributions to this country. I suspect, since I have 10 minutes, I think, right, for the responses, I'm not going to enumerate them all. I'll make one point which I think is relevant on the way looking forward, which is, as I said the other night in an interview, he and I, we share the same values in terms of solidarity, taking care of one another. emphasis on reconciliation, emphasis on equality of all Canadians, and building a better country for everyone else. The difference, one of the differences, there are many, but one of the differences between the two of us goes to the question I was just asked, which is I put much more emphasis on the economy, on growing the economy. In fact, in this circumstance that we're in, given the scale of the crisis and what needs to be done, I would say a relentless focus on growing the economy to work for all Canadians.
So you can see that he kind of eventually got to where he wanted to go, which was, yes, I have the same values as Justin Trudeau, but I'm better at managing the economy, basically. And if he had been asked that question 10 times on the campaign trail, that's what he would have said. But the telling part was the and it did remind me, I mentioned this on our live stream last night, but there was a really important part in the US 2024 election when Kamala Harris went on The View, right? She wasn't doing any difficult interviews throughout the campaign. She went into a friendly environment, kind of let her guard down. And a very simple question from Sunny Hostin was, what would you do differently than Joe Biden? And she couldn't think of anything. She couldn't think of a single thing. And that in and of itself was newsworthy because it's like, okay, so she's not differentiating herself from Joe Biden. I sort of got that from Carney last night, that he knew that he should say no. He knew that he should say distance myself from Trudeau because everybody hates him. But he couldn't because he believes in so many of the same things as Justin Trudeau, and he holds the same values, and he wants everyone to know that he's equally as left-wing as Justin Trudeau. And so to me, that was just such a fantastic, wonderful question. What was your response and reaction to that?
Well, I did ask a follow-up where I sort of detailed how, well, okay, you think he's great, and it sort of shows because you've kept all of his teams surrounding you. You've kept the guy that released Paul Bernardo from maximum security prison. You've made him your chief of staff. This was wildly unpopular. He made the person who made his life's work, the carbon tax, Stephen Guilbeault, his lieutenant in Quebec. And Terry Guion, Justin Trudeau's media enforcer, who I don't know if he's going to be staying around very long. I've heard rumors that he might be on the way out. But for now, he's Mark Carney's media enforcer. So he has this full team those are the higher ups. His entire cabinet and caucus all the way down are almost identical to Justin Trudeau. So the question really is like, sure, the leader might have changed, but the caucus doesn't change their beliefs. He's not changing their ideology. He's not changing their belief system. Leopards don't change their spots, as they say. And Justin Trudeau had these guys walking in lockstep with him. They were his biggest fans for a decade. They're not just going to be like, oh yeah, now we need to get serious about the economy. Now that Mark Carney's the leader, and we're going to leave all of this crazy garbage that the country hates, like the carbon tax. Even I was going to get to this if I could have asked another question. One of Mark Carney's candidates said yesterday that she couldn't promise that the carbon tax would never come back, meaning that, yeah, it's paused for now because it's electorally unpopular, but just you wait. Give us a majority, and in year 2, we're going to go back to the same old garbage that we've been doing for the last decade. There really is no difference between this Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party. It's just that this guy has a new smile.
Right. Okay. Well, we have the second clip. So this is Keean Bexte's follow-up question. You're given one question, one follow-up. And here is where he details similar to what he just said. Now, the interesting thing for me, Keean, is, again, Mark Carney's reaction, because he hasn't really clued into the fact that you're not part of the media guard. Like, I think he just probably assumed that any journalist ever asking him a question has been screened by the CBC. Their questions have been vetted by his campaign. So he's never going to get a new question, specifically not a big night like tonight. Like, maybe he wasn't briefed in. So you can see Mark Carney kind of saying, like, I haven't seen you at my press events. Well, of course, because he's had Kian banned and arrested when Kian has tried to come to his campaign events. And then he actually says,
the mic was hot when I said, well, yeah, because you've been kicking me out. I said that under my breath. I didn't think that was going to get caught, but it was pretty. My mom texted me afterwards. She's like, we all heard you.
Yeah, I mean, the internet heard you too, Kian. Okay, let's play the clip. And yes, pay close attention to the hot mic with Kian and Carney's sort of bewilderment that someone was asking a question that he hadn't been pre-approved from him. Let's play that clip.
Your entire campaign does seem to be predicated on putting you in the front and hiding the people that stood in lockstep with Justin Trudeau for the last 10 years. You're kind of hoping that Canadians won't connect the dots, that the people standing behind you in your caucus walked in lockstep with him. Regardless of what you say right now, Stephen Guilbeault made the carbon tax's life work. the man that moved Paul Bernardo from a maximum security prison is now your chief of staff. I'm wondering how you reconcile this and how you can trust their judgment when they thought those ideas were good ideas.
I'd say a couple of things to that rather odd question. First is that the candidates in this election for the Liberal Party, I mean, you go and see when I make an announcement. I don't think I've seen you at any of them, but next time you can come. And you will see a wide range of the candidates that are there presenting themselves. So, for example, with respect to our announcement on crime, we had Bill Blair, now the Minister of Defense, of course, formerly the Chief of Police and a long time in Toronto, and Natalie Provost, who is a new candidate. We're honored to have her, and someone who's dedicated their life to helping to end gun violence and violence against women. There is a very wide range of candidates that have come to the party with me. There's a lot of fresh blood. There's also a lot of experience that's there, and you need that combination of energy, new ideas, experience, and a fundamental passion for making this country better in order to serve at this crucial time. Thank you very much.
You know, this is the first time that I'm actually rewatching this, and he actually did quietly there say, next time you can come.
Yeah, I know. I put it on X at the time because I said, I think he just gave you an invitation. I think you should try to use that to get in, because the thing about Carney is he's trying to be likable and he's trying to be reasonable. And again, I don't think that like his staff adequately warned him that at the leaders debate, independent media are allowed to ask questions. And so I mean, his answer is interesting too, because he was trying to emphasize the new blood. And I think he named one candidate that was new, and then also named Bill Blair, and basically tried to emphasize like that he is different. And then, just in that little kind of like back and forth between you, he seemed like friendly to the idea that you should be able to come to his events, which makes me think that, to your earlier point, maybe it's not even Mark Carney that's banning you and other independent media from his events. It's like the Trudeau holdover staff that are like so ingrained in this idea that conservatives and independent journalists are the enemy, and that under no circumstances can they get anywhere near a leader. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take him up on that offer and go. I have a feeling I know how this is going to turn out, but you know, I've been sort of gauging the temperature and the response, and you know, the response from the mainstream media has just been breathless. You know, they're furious because after I did that, you know, there was about half a dozen independent journalists that asked really, really prickly questions, and I'm wondering if there's a sweet spot here where we can ask questions that are serious, that our viewers want answers to, that would never be asked by the mainstream media, but aren't so stinging that they'll let us back in so we can keep doing it. Because it's not so much about the stunt every 4 years. These questions are important. And if we're able to ask them in a professional way, that even when the viewers see it, they say, yeah, you know, that's a fair question. And that's honestly been, I mean, there's some crazy liberals that have been saying Keean shouldn't be allowed near a microphone anywhere, which, you know, they're never going to change their mind. But these moderates, these centrists are saying, well, you know, Keean's question actually was pretty legitimate, given, you know, I could list the questions that I had prepared that I could have asked, and they would have stung. But I decided that this was probably better. And I'm glad that we did, because, you know, maybe if we can build a relationship with Mark, if he wins, we will not survive another 4 years if we are not able to hold him to account. If if he's governing this country with just him and Rosemary Barton in the room discussing what Canada needs, we're going to have a really big problem. So we need people like Juno News putting a light on him, and whatever we need to do to get into these rooms to ask him questions that our viewers and Canadians at large want answers to, we need to do that.
Absolutely. Well, we can go through some of the others. I think that Rebel News did a fantastic job when it came to Jagmeet Singh. They were able to get 2 questions to him. Drea Humphrey asked a really, really strong question about anti-Christian hatred, burning down churches. Jagmeet just made an absolute fool of himself, refusing to answer. I do want to play Alex Zoltan's clip, though, because he was able to ask 2 questions just like you. His questions were more prickly. They were on one of these divisive social issues. And I think your point, right? If we lived in a normal country where there was press freedom, True North and Juno News and The Rebel, counter signal, we would be able to ask questions of the leaders day in and day out, right? And so our questions wouldn't feel so out of place, and they wouldn't be so shocking to people if it was just an everyday occurrence. But because we only get one shot at this, like, we're going to make sure that the questions count. So here is True North's Alex Zoltan asking Mark Carney how many genders there are, and then asking if he supports women-only spaces. Let's play that clip.
If you thought my friend's question was odd, you're going to love this one.
I'm glad you self-assessed that. Okay.
How many genders are there?
There, in terms of sex, there are 2. Thank you.
My follow-up question then, do you believe that women, biological women, have the right to their own spaces, their own sports, their own change rooms, their own prisons, their own homeless shelters?
I think this is Canada, and that as a general objective, yes. But we work in where we value all Canadians for who they are, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you very much.
That was without a doubt the best question of the night. That really exposed Mark Carney for who he was.
I mean, I will say he eventually, at least the first one, came to the right thing. He said there's 2, which I imagine might be controversial to some on the far left, people who support him because they believe that there are, I think didn't someone say that someone heckled Alex and said there's 27 genders or something like that? Anyway, and then the second question he did not answer. He just said, this is Canada, like, kind of in theory, yes, but, and I think in saying in Canada we accept others, meaning that we need to accept men in women's spaces, basically. So he didn't come to a very good answer there, and it is newsworthy. Like, that was the question that made my phone blow up, and people messaging me, friends, former colleagues, people just saying, like, thank you, because that is a question that I want to know, and that is a question that is important to me as a mother, with daughters and playing sports and all these kind of things. Like, these are issues that matter to Canadians. The journalists don't like it, but this is a question that should have been asked to him.
The thing is, this exact question was asked of Pierre Poilievre.
Right.
The exact question. So why is it okay to ask? Well, I mean, I know why, and I'll say why. It's okay to ask Pierre that because it was coming from the perspective of, you must say that there's some like vague third option of non-binary, two-spirited queerness that you need to accept right now while I grill you with this important question. That's why that question was okay when Pierre Poilievre was asked it. But when it was asked by Alex Zoltan, it was asked from a different perspective. Now that the world has sort of woken up from this weird fever dream where they think that there's 27 genders, and now it's sort of like culturally appropriate to accept biological reality and know that there is only 2, and I don't know what the world was thinking for the last half decade. Now that he's asking the question from that perspective, it's absolutely outrageous, alt-right, crazy, outrageous that you do that. But the average viewer seeing that, there's nothing that could legitimize our cause more than asking these questions in this format right now, which is why the Liberals are so furious on Twitter, on X, on whatever social media they're using these days when they're coping and seething. You can tell that they are wounded by the questions that we asked because they were so effective, because we had a national audience. We did our job, and it shows because they're so furious.
Well, let's get to some of that. So the CBC was covering the event live. You pointed out in our live stream as well last night, you were out in the freezing cold because they wouldn't let you do a call, like a stand-up or an interview from inside the building because the event was hosted at Radio Canada's headquarters and CBC headquarters in Montreal. And so you had to go outside. We saw the nice, beautiful tent that they had created for Rosemary Barton while you were out in the cold. So let's go inside the tent. And here is Rosemary Barton calling us a very right-wing website and adding that it was the Debates Commission, how dare them, that let us in.
Rosie, I'm curious what stood out to you, because at one point when some of those last questions came up, I just checked to make sure, no, we're in Canada, because the identity politics questions have not emerged much.
This happens on the same day that the United Kingdom court ruled that woman and sex refer to biological woman and biological sex. True North is a very right-wing website, and there have been issues in the past with who gets allowed into these scrums and who's allowed to ask questions of the leaders. The commission, Debates Commission, was the one who decided that these people were allowed to come in and ask these kinds of questions. So there you go.
these people. Remember when Don Cherry got canceled for saying that? And there was Rosemary Barton saying it about us. The other journalist that she was talking to, Arsenal, I can't remember her name, she said that she couldn't believe that it was Canada and that these questions, these divisive social questions, were being asked in Canada. And Rosemary Barton said, it was just a few days ago in the UK that the Supreme Court ruled that women are women and men are men, right? So this is an important issue around the world. You mentioned that Pierre Poilievre had that question asked to him. I think it was about 2 months ago or 3 months ago when President Trump signed an executive order saying men are men and women are women. And then he went on CP24, which is a Toronto news station, and the host asked him how many genders there are, right? And so that was a legitimate question. I want to take us back 1 year ago in February 2024. Danielle Smith in Alberta announced the ban of sex change operations for children, and the entire parliamentary press gallery ran to ask Pierre Poilievre. So I'm just going to play a clip of this scrum. Here they all are asking this question of Pierre Poilievre just 1 year ago.
Do you support age restrictions for puberty blockers and hormone therapies for trans kids?
I think that Justin Trudeau is trying to divide and distract Canadians by spreading disinformation about the decisions that premiers and parents are making.
I want to know
What do you think? What do you think?
I want to know your position.
What do you own party policy? It's your own party policy. A party
I think we
convention.
should protect the rights of parents to make their own decisions.
What does it mean?
With regards to their children. And I believe that adults should have the freedom to make any decision they want about their bodies.
But minors ban surgeries and medical interventions for minors, as your own party members suggested.
Medical interventions like what?
That is the language that your party
What medical
used.
interventions?
Well, you would have to ask your party members.
What medical
such
interventions?
Such as puberty blockers and hormone
For minors?
Yeah. Yes.
Irreversible? You're talking about
I
irreversible?
would like to understand your
I just want to be
position.
clear. No, I want to be clear. I just want to be clear.
For minors.
Puberty blockers for minors?
Do you agree with that?
Do you agree with that?
I think that we should protect children
What
and their
does that
ability
mean?
to make adult decisions when they're adults.
So I just play that clip to show you that the entire parliamentary press gallery, you could hear them all shouting. And look, I don't begrudge them for that. That is their job as journalists, to ask questions of our leaders. But my only question is, why is it okay for the entire parliamentary press gallery to be pressing Pierre Poilievre like that, pushing him, trying to get him, trap him in answering a question that you could tell he hadn't prepared an answer to? And it takes him a while, but eventually he gets there and says, no, children shouldn't be allowed to make decisions, for adults decisions are for adults. My only question is, why don't they do that to Mark Carney? Like, why is it that we have to know the position when it comes to divisive social issues from the Conservative leader? But even just asking any kind of question like this to Mark Carney is just absolutely unacceptable, according to these journalists.
Well, you've said it yourself. It's because they're doing it. They're allowed to. We're not allowed to. They know how effective it is. They've run the country for decades supporting Justin Trudeau by using this playbook. Attack the Conservatives on social issues and mask liberal insanity as much as possible by using the tricks of the trade to launch softballs at them that are, what kind of shampoo do you use when you're in an airplane with the leader of a G7 country, and that's the question you ask him. It's intentional. That's how they protected Justin Trudeau for a decade, and they're hoping for another decade with Mark Carney. And I'm not going to play by those rules. And I don't think anyone at Juno is. And Rebel News and the Western Standard and the Epoch Times, I don't think that they're going to do. I don't think that they're going to play by those rules anymore, because the stakes are so high now, and we know what their game is. We know what the tricks are that they use. And we're going to use the exact same ones to get answers for our viewers. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about a stunt. This isn't about me. This isn't about Alex Zoltan. This isn't even about Juno News. It is about our viewers and Canadians at large, and getting them results, which means getting them answers to questions that they can't ask themselves. But they're sitting at their dinner table saying, man, I wonder what Mark Carney actually thinks, or what he would say when he was asked an unscripted question about, should my daughter be able to be guided down this trans pipeline by the school guidance counselor? What does Mark Carney actually think about that? These Canadians want to know an answer to that and many other questions. And, if he wins, we'll have 4 years to grill him on it. I just hope that he's not going to be using the same tricks that Trudeau used to keep us out, which, given his track record during the campaign, I'm not so bullish on, but I guess we'll see. We do have a recording of him inviting me, so maybe I'll just bring that with me when I go to his next press conference.
Show up with it on your phone. Okay, let's go to a bit more of the reaction. Here is CBC's David Cochrane saying that the Debates Commission must be accountable for daring to allow us in the door.
I think the Debate Commission is going to need to be accountable for what's kind of happening here. They moved the time of the debate the day before. They kicked the Greens out the morning of, and they've opened up the Scrums and the press access to a bunch of groups who sometimes are registered charities or have been defined by their owner as not actually a journalistic organization, or have been ruled by the federal court to not be a journalistic organization. And in an election like this one, with very substantive debate on very substantive issues, moderated very well and executed very well by all the leaders, this is where this is going.
And we've got another clip here. This is CBC's senior reporter Ashley Burke, again saying that the post-debate scrums were dominated by right-wing media groups, and basically just saying, like, how dare us go and ask questions. Play that clip.
The leader spoke post-debate in those scrums. What did you hear from those scrums?
The post-debate scrums were dominated by right-wing media groups who flooded leaders with questions on topics unrelated to the debate. One did ask Carney if he felt Trudeau was a good prime minister. Carney said that he was, and that they have shared values, including taking care of Canadians, reconciliation, and equality.
Interesting, Keean, that she felt the need to rehash Carney's answer to you, to explain to viewers that he don't worry, folks, he did a great job answering Keean Bexte's question. Yeah. A bit more of the reaction. So we had former cabinet minister for Justin Trudeau, Catherine McKenna, saying, "Thank you, Jagmeet Singh. This is how you deal with disinformation, peddling, rage farming outlets." Of course, Jagmeet Singh just rather embarrassingly refused to take a very good question from the Rebel News. And to me, he just showed how his intellectual inability to engage with issues that he doesn't understand. That we don't have time to get to that as much, but he's just such a joke. Anyway, next we have Ezra Levant, who basically took us behind the scenes a little here. And he writes that at least a dozen other journalists were literally heckling Drea as she asked her question, including Justin Ling, who wrote about Drea's question in the Toronto Star, but forgot to mention that he was shouting at her. Okay, so these legacy media journalists, they're not exactly unbiased, right? They were there heckling you guys. I'm told that during the debate itself, they were basically laughing and cheering anytime Pierre Poilievre got a tough question, and were actively cheering on Mark Carney. And then the journalists took their rage from us and shifted it towards the Debates Commission. So here's Andrew Coyne on X saying, "Fire every member of the Debates Commission." Chantal Hébert agreed. Both of these are at issue panelists. She says, "Brought to you by the Debates Commission, a gong show." And then you have Chris Selly of the National Post saying, "This is the end of the Debates Commission banquet." And finally, Amanda Rose, who I wasn't familiar with this person, she's an entrepreneur. She writes that watching Rebel News and True North ask bad faith questions after the debate is the best argument for public funding of the CBC. We need journalism, not propaganda. So just quickly here, Kian, to folks that don't really understand, okay, so this is what happened. Prior to Justin Trudeau being prime minister, these debates during the election used to be organized by the private media companies themselves, right? So CTV might do one, Global might do one, Maclean's might do one. And basically every media company kind of offers to organize them, and then they see which leaders agree to show up to them. Justin Trudeau, as he did for so many other issues, decided that the government needed to be in charge of this, that even though the free market was doing a perfectly fine job doing it, he wanted the government to take over. So the government took over, and they used that to try to ban independent media. And so interestingly, before you and I actually worked together, we teamed up because in 2019, they banned True North's Andrew Lawton, and then you were working at the Rebel that time, and they banned you as well. And so we decided to sue. Ezra heard that we were suing, called me up, say, "We're going to sue too." The courts decided to hear our two cases together. And so we went to Toronto. We had our case heard before a federal judge the day of the debates, right? And it was happening on a Monday. We were in court that day, and the judge, a federal judge, ruled in our favor and said, the government cannot prevent citizen journalists from asking questions of their leader. So we got that court order. We used that to get Andrew Lawton into the debate, to get you into the debate. In 2021, they actually let True North in, so we didn't have to sue. Rebel was not allowed in. They sued again. They got in. And so this time around, the Debates Commission just didn't even bother trying to block us. They saw the writing on the wall, that the courts, the judges, as much as I often disagree with what happens in courts in Canada, this time they got it right. They made the right decision, saying in a free society, Canada's still a free society, it's still a democracy, we do have freedom of the press, these are journalists, you must let them in. And this, 364 days a year, we don't get in. The 1 day a year, and it's not even per year because it's every 4 years or every 2 years whenever there's election, we have a court-ordered paper saying that we are accredited journalists, let us in. And so they did. And last night, it was actually wonderful to see. The debate itself was kind of predictable. They spent like half the time talking about the environment. They spent a full 10 minutes, by the way, talking about abortion, right? So here they are saying that in Canada, we shouldn't have to talk about social issues during a campaign. And yet they're happily taking 10 minutes up of the debate to talk about an issue that, much to my disappointment, all of the parties have the exact same view and no one's going to change any law. It shouldn't even be an election issue. But anyway, there were a lot of independent reporters. There were a lot of independent journalists there, not just from the Rebel, True North, and Juno News. There were a couple of other ones, French language ones, groups on the left that I hadn't heard of before, and they were actually the best questions. The questions that the legacy media were asking were literally the same things that were covered in the debate. They were just asking the questions again for some reason, whereas the independent media brought new ideas, fresh energy, a different perspective. Again, to me, this is like what the purpose of the media is. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, that one person said that this is the death of the Debates Commission. I don't think that the Liberals are going to be happy with this, but I think that it's kind of missing the point here. I think this is the death of the legacy media, or at least the beginning of it, because our viewership is huge, our engagement is high, and our questions are great. What we did was more effective at getting answers for Canadians than anything Rosemary Barton did all day, all week, probably the whole campaign. Nothing received more traction than what we just did. And, I think that it might be topped by tonight. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an absolute gong show tonight. I'm really excited to see what happens. And I'm preparing my questions now. It all depends on which leader we get, because it's kind of random how they open the gates and let a leader out. You're not sure where you're going to be in line. And we'll see, I guess, what happens. But it's going to be a rodeo. I think that it is going to show, again, that the mainstream media can't be trusted with the truth. They can't be trusted to hold leaders accountable because they are built to be machines that siphon grant money away from the federal government. That is all they exist to do. Their corporate structure is designed for it. They do it well, and they're desperate to keep it running, to keep filling their machine with the fuel of taxpayers' dollars. So, I don't expect any tough questions from them. There's a few. There's a few at the CBC. They're not going to be let in the question line because only one outlet, every outlet only gets one question, except for Rebel, which has an exemption. I don't think any tough questions are going to be asked by the legacy media, by the mainstream media. I don't hold high hopes. If they do, it's just going to be finding, Pierre's worst moment in the debate and rehashing it. That is all they will do. You can bet money on that's what they'll do. Because, whatever the weakest point is, they'll find it and they'll exploit it because their goal is to stop Pierre Poilievre from winning. And our goal is to get answers for Canadians, which is what journalists used to do. This is sort of like old style journalism where the goal wasn't to persuade people one way or the other. It was to get answers. And the leaders will persuade people themselves. They'll do their job. Mark Carney's answer on gender spoke for itself. Maybe some far left extremists who were supporting his party because they wanted to stop the Conservatives might realize that, Stephen Harper chose Mark Carney for a reason, because he wasn't some radical SJW. And these people who naturally want to support the NDP and these left-wing extremist causes, maybe they're going to be dissuaded from it. It's not our job, frankly. Some people saying that we didn't move the needle at all. They're kind of telling on themselves a little bit in the mainstream media that they think that the media's job is to move the dial and is to convince people that orange man bad, blue man good, or red man good. That's not the case. Our goal is to get answers. That's it. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the people that said that we were asking bad faith questions, I generally don't understand. Like, I think that the questions were just motivated by an interest in what the prime minister will say. And that should be what's
Mhm.
motivated all journalists. Really looking forward to tonight. I do want to make one point. The debate itself, like I said, it was, I thought Pierre did really well. It was very jarring to have to watch a debate through translators. I didn't like the voices that they chose. Like both Pierre Polyev and Jagmeet Singh had like very annoying voiced translators. And the only thing I could
Mark Carney
really
sounded exactly like him, though. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah, and then Yves Francois Blanchette had this like beautiful British accent, so he got the best voice in the translators. But basically, like you could only kind of judge it by how they looked, and I thought that Pierre Polyev looked very confident. I think that he was hitting the right notes, and it seemed to me that Mark Carney just looked weak and uncomfortable. He made a couple of blunders, like he said that he was going to continue to support UNRWA, which is a very discredited global aid organization that has been infiltrated by Hamas. The framing of the questions themselves were also like everything was focused on Trump, and then they spent a very long time talking about the environment. When they finally got to talk about immigration, the way that the question was framed, they literally asked whether Canada should accept refugees from the United States because of Trump. That was the immigration question. Like, we have a totally broken immigration system that has been destroyed and pillaged from 10 years of Justin Trudeau. That is the root cause of so many other social problems that we have and economic problems in our country. And yet the way that CBC debate framed it was literally, can people from Haiti who don't feel safe in the United States under President Trump come to Canada? It did give Pierre Poilievre an opportunity to shine and to point out Mark Carney's radical position with the Century Initiative and the 100 million. I don't know that many Canadians had heard that before. But interestingly, Kian, they've announced that they have removed immigration from the English debate tonight. So French Canadians and Quebecers are allowed to talk about immigration. English Canadians are not. And so, this is the thing about these government debates, is what they omit is just as important as what they don't, which means all the more likely that the independent media asking questions are going to want to go there because the mainstream media censors it and they don't allow these questions to take place. So we will be back tonight, folks, 6:30 p.m. We are doing our live stream. The English debate starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, and then it will be 2 hours. So the post-debate scrums, that's the part you're going to want to grab your popcorn and tune in to see what kind of questions get put to the leaders. I wonder if they'll pull some shenanigans, Kian, to try to prevent the independent press from asking questions of the leader. I don't know that they can, but I feel like they're going to try. So we're going to want to watch that part, and then we'll be back after all of that with more post-debate analysis. So I hope you will tune in. Kian, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for your work, and good luck tonight.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we will be back at 6:30. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to head on over to junonews.com and become a subscriber. Join the movement, join the independent journalists, and help us support what we do. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. I'm Candice Malcolm. This is the Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you, and God bless.